So this is how much money I made as a self-published romance author in 2025. I was inspired to make this video because I've seen other authors online talking about how much money they've made, and a lot of the time these authors seem to make incredible amounts of money, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars or just a lot of money. And I am very much not that. Sometimes I'm even kind of embarrassed about how much I make. But I shouldn't be, because money is still money and this might be useful to someone. Yeah, let's just get into the numbers. So these are screenshots I took from my KDP dashboard. And firstly, I want to point out that this is in Australian dollars, so you can see the A in front of the 22K. So yes, it says that I've made $22,000 in 2025, and that is a lot of money for me. At the moment, I'm a university student, so yeah, the money isn't exactly rolling in, and for that reason, it is a lot of money. It is also a lot of money to the 19-year-old version of me who started self-publishing and was excited to even make a few $100s or even $1,000. So that version of myself would probably be really excited to see that figure. That being said, I'm going to get into expenses later and you will see that 22K isn't actually 22K in my bank account. So these are the top books and how much money they made. So helpfully, KDP has everything split into digital royalties. So if that's if someone buys an ebook. There's print royalties. So that's if someone buys a paperback. And subscription royalties. So that's if someone reads your book in Kindle Unlimited. So His Secret Obsession is the top performing book, and it is my highest earning book. It was the highest earning last year as well, and it came out in November 2023. Actually, it's kind of odd how this book performs so well, not because I necessarily think that it's because of the book itself, but I feel like Amazon sort of pushes it out more, because I've noticed that it just seems to climb higher in the rankings and gets more reads than my other books. That might be because it's slightly longer. A lot of my books are around 70,000 words, but His Secret Obsession is 77, if I recall correctly. You can even see in the subscription royalties section, it just seems to make a lot more money from Kindle Unlimited, even though it might sell fewer ebooks, just because I think that Kindle Unlimited recommends it more or something like that. I'm not really sure, but it's interesting anyway. Next we have Bedroom Lessons, and this is a book that came out this year, so I think it got a boost from being a new book. And then these three are all backlog categories, I guess. So The Boyfriend Rivalry and The Enemy Benefit came out in 2021, and then The Straight Game came out in 2022. So I guess they came out sort of a while ago, but they still are in the top 5, which is kind of surprising. And these are the next 5 books. So we have The Anonymous Hookup, which is the 4th book in that Eastern Grammar series. We have Dates and Mistakes. We have A Tent for Two, Rival Roommate, and Rival Rematch. Things to note about these last 2 books is that Rival Roommate was initially a book that I wrote for newsletter subscribers, and then I used it as a email magnet. Basically, I offered it for free to anyone who subscribed to my newsletter, so that way I could get more newsletter subscribers to market to, and they could receive the book for free and read it for free. But it was also on Amazon as well, but since I was offering it for free, it meant that it wasn't available on Kindle Unlimited. So as you can see, the Kindle Unlimited number is extremely low because I only enrolled it in Kindle Unlimited in December, I believe, because I stopped giving it out for free on BookFunnel. So the reason why I did that is because I decided that I was going to write a sequel, like I said that I would. I got a lot of emails asking for a sequel, and I just one day woke up and I looked at my Scrivener documents and I was like, yeah, I'm going to write a sequel. I'm going to finish this story. So that sequel is Rival Rematch, and this book came out on Boxing Day. So that's the 26th of December. I'm assuming that's why it's a fairly low figure, but not bad for only being out in the last few days of the year. I also have an 11th book called The Jealousy Pact, but that's my first ever book, and it generally does not sell as well because it's not strictly a romance. Like, it's not really a romance at all. It's like a young adult novel. By the way, if you ever want to hear me talk more about the actual books that I've written, then I can do that. But I guess this video is more about the numbers rather than the books itself. I always feel kind of self-conscious and embarrassed when talking about my books because they always feel like silly little things, but that's something I'll touch on later in this video. So these are all of the books I sold and they were all paid. However, I do want to note that many of them were 99 cents. Usually I price my books at $4.99 USD and novellas at $2.99, but occasionally I do run promos where books are 99 cents. So in May, this blue section indicates Bedroom Lessons because that's when it came out, and this really big jump here is when I got a BookBub promo. If you're not aware, BookBub is a really useful tool within self-publishing because you can submit a book to be a featured deal, and if you're chosen, then BookBub will email their newsletter subscribers and say, hey, this book is on sale, you should check it out. And since they have so many newsletter subscribers, it really does give your book a boost. So even though a featured deal can be kind of pricey, you will earn money back, and more than that, your book will jump in the rankings and you'll get more readers and you can get more reviews, and there's just all sorts of benefits. So I've never received a BookBub featured deal before, and so I was really happy to get this one, and maybe I'll make a video talking more about it because there are other videos on YouTube discussing like whether the BookBub featured deal is worth it. So I thought it might be nice to share my experience. But yes, we can see the jump here, and then one of these colors here somewhere should be Rival Rematch, but it's kind of hard to see since the graph is so small. Next, we have Kindle Unlimited page reads. So sort of similarly, we have a jump for Bedroom Lessons when it came out, and then when the BookBub deal came out, the page reads started to dip down here, and then over here, I think this must have been the His Secret Obsession promotion, which boosted page reads, and one of these colors here somewhere will be Rival Rematch. But as much as I am pleased about this figure, $22,000, there are caveats, and so I'm going to talk about expenses. And the figure is right there, $10,000. Now, is this perfect? No. Do I have an Excel spreadsheet? Yes. Is my Excel spreadsheet actually well managed? Not exactly. I'm not a commerce student, so I'm just kind of, I just make my Excel spreadsheet look pretty and put in all the numbers and hope that everything works out. My expenses in 2025 were roughly $10,000, and you might be wondering, how did you spend that much money? I genuinely don't know. Okay, so I know I spent money on advertising, and this is also something that I feel a little bit embarrassed about because it's like, if you're such a small writer in like such a big pool, the pool that is Amazon, should you really be spending money when you're not really making money? But for the most part, I can say advertising does have a return on investment. I also think that it's good to try and reach new readers, and even like without the money aspect or the reading aspect, I think that learning how to use platforms like Meta Ads is just a useful skill to have. If you would like to see a video all about my thoughts on running ads as an author, then I'll definitely do that, because even though I feel like I'm still learning, I might have some useful tips to share. I also spent money on an editor. I spent money on a website, not just like a website, but like, you need to host the website, you need to have your domain name. I also use services like BookFunnel. Oh, that reminds me, I've also used other services in the past, like services to get ARC reviewers, and also not just paying for ads, but also paying to promote your novels by getting them on one of those book promo sites. So like I mentioned before, I did put out 2 new books. However, I don't know, I set some goals and I wanted to write more and I didn't. So I hope to write more in 2026. Usually new books boost your income. That's pretty obvious because, new books, it's something new to read. But yeah. So this here is a picture of my 2025 diary that looks all beat up and stuff. I'm thinking that my next video will be reflecting on my 2025 goals and writing progress and stuff like that, because I do write a lot of stuff down by hand, so it's kind of interesting to see what I did with my writing throughout the year. But lastly, I just want to talk about money, and I want to talk about all of this. So while recording this video, I felt weirdly vulnerable and defensive, which is kind of a silly thing to feel, but I think that on the internet, especially in the romance space, romance is like a really lucrative genre. So sometimes it makes me feel like, wow, I've been writing for these past few years and I haven't really made the hundreds of thousands of dollars that everyone else seems to be making. And like I said before, 20k, well, you know, if you take away the expenses, it's like 12k. 12k is still a lot of money, especially for someone like me who is a young student, but it's like nothing compared to people who are working full time. And it's not like I was putting in full-time hours, but yeah, I guess it is kind of strangely weird to share the money you've made. And I know that this is my first video, and this first video is about money, but that's because when I decided to make a YouTube channel, which was approximately half an hour ago, it was because I wanted my first video to be something actually useful, you know, instead of just rhapsodizing about my thoughts about writing and stuff. So I thought that this video would be actually useful to anyone who wanted to write, either like within the same genre as me, or just because they were curious about how much a relatively small author can make. So while I think that royalties are useful to look at, and it would be nice to earn more money, just like probably everyone wants to make more money, I think that at the same time I kind of want to write the books I want to write. And yeah, I don't know, it's something interesting to think about. It's like, should I write more books? But no, those books won't be as good. But if you spend more time on these books, will they even be better? And also, does it really matter because I'm writing silly little romances? But also, are those romances actually silly, or, you know, do they touch people? Because romance books matter to me, you know? So I'm kind of like branching into a lot of topics, but that's basically the video. This is my first YouTube video. Hopefully it wasn't too cringe, and hopefully I don't delete it in like 3 days, but I thought it might be useful to start documenting my experience as an author. In fact, I kind of wish that I started this years ago so I could see just how I thought about writing and what I did and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts about this video, or if you have any questions. I do want to make another video soon. Subscribe if you want to see more content. I feel like such a YouTuber saying that. But yeah, that's it. Bye!